Hello book nerds, this is Gabby and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today we're gonna be talking about my top 10 favorite books of all time. I've been thinking about making this video for a while, but I haven't because I found difficult to narrow the list down to 10, but I'll do my best. This is supposed to be just us hanging out and chatting about these books because I'm in no way planning to rank them from worst to best or best to worst. Because to be honest, I can only rank my absolute favorite book of all time, but then the list gets a little bit blurry. It's changing all the time. Actually, I think by the end of the year, the list might look a little bit different because I'm currently reading so many good books that may make it to the list at the end of the year. Before starting, I wanted to clarify that for series or trilogies or duologies, I'm gonna pick my favorite book of those series. With that being said, let's get on with it. So the first book that I'm gonna talk about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I read this book at the end of last year and I absolutely adored it. This book is about a girl named Addie that in the 18th century, she was escaping from an arranged marriage. She goes to the forest to pray and a dark god appears. She asks him for freedom to escape from this life and he offers her a deal. He offers her immortality and freedom to travel around the world by herself at the cost of not being remembered by anyone. She can meet people, but once they turn around and they see her again, they don't remember her. And that sucks. I love this book so much because it's a really well done portrayal of human emotions, of human relationship, how important it is to leave our mark in the world, how important it is for people to remember you. It's so emotionally charged. It impacted me emotionally a lot because there are so many things that I could relate to: grief, insecurities, crave for love, acceptance. There's so much to it. There's so much to these characters. It is really, really character focused. The plot moves really slow, and that's what it's like. Most people that criticize this book, it's because of the slow pace, and they are right. It's a really slow burn book, but it's worth it 100%. Besides, V.E. Schwab's writing here shines also brightly. It's beautiful. Then we will move on to The Lives of Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is book 1 in the Gentleman Bastard series, which is one of my favorite series of all time. And this book is amazing. We follow a group of orphans taught by a fake priest in the arts of thieving, false-facing, and deceiving. And as they grow up, they get to be professional thieves. Before I start gushing about this book though, I need to say that it takes a while to get used to Scott Lynch's writing because it can be a little bit slow, but once you get on board, it's such a ride. This is a very character-focused book. We follow mainly Locke, Lamora, John Tannen, and the rest of the Gentleman Bastard gang. And what can I say? It's a lot of fun. I laughed out loud so much with this book. It's witty, it's funny, it's exciting. The dialogues are hilarious and so well thought. This book is genius and I really recommend anyone to read it. Then we move on to Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. I've talked a little bit already about Peter Pan in my channel. I also have a dedicated review on this book, so you can click on the link in the corner or in the description down below if you want to check that one out. I think we all kind of know the story about Peter Pan. We follow this kid that doesn't want to grow up ever. He wants to stay a child and he lives in Neverland. He hates parents because they are so obsessed with adulthood and he just wants to have fun. Peter is a brat. He's selfish to a fault. He just wants to live adventures, and anything that gets in the way of that, it's pretty much disposable. But he's such a lonely kid. He pretends that he doesn't need love or affection, but he certainly does. This book is beautifully narrated. It's kind of narrated for kids, but the story is much darker. Neverland, although it stays this whimsy, fantastical, and magical island, there's so much darkness to it. There's a lot of talk about violence really openly, not just from the pirates, but from the Lost Boys and Peter himself. There's a lot of social commentary about childhood and adulthood, and although we follow our protagonist that hates adults, there's so much to appreciate about adulthood, and I don't know, I love this book so much. The end just made me cry like a baby. It hurt me so bad, but in a way that makes me appreciate it so much more. I really recommend this book to anyone. Next, we're going with The Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I tried to find my copy of it, but I couldn't find it. I don't know if I lended it to someone or I lost it in one of the movings. But I love this book so much. I haven't read it in a while, but I remember it as it was yesterday that I read it because it impacted me so hard. So this book is a classic. It's about a group of schoolboys that were evacuated in World War II, and their plane crashed and they were stranded into a deserted island, and they had to learn to live by themselves in the wild. At first, everything seems to go fine because there are no parents, there are no adults, there are no rules, and they are kids and they can have fun. But then everything kind of spirals down into chaos and violence, and this book is shocking, is horrifying, is disturbing in a very realistic but depressing way. This book is a portrayal of the worst of humankind. What can we become if we just don't have any rules, any laws, any social cues? It's absolute chaos. I understand that William Golding wrote this book after coming back from the war, so his view about humankind changed a lot, and it was a lot more negative than it used to be. It kind of shows how fast we can hurt other people or do evil without even realizing how everything changes. This even though I don't agree fully with what this author says, the social commentary is so hard and so explicit. This is a book that it may not have the best pace or the most engaging way of storytelling, but the social commentary that it has, the topics that he not so subtly presents us, makes it for me a masterpiece, because this is a book that just makes you think so much. It's not a book that you just close and say like, okay, moving on. No. Next book on the list is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I am a Potterhead to the core. I love this series. I grew up with Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and my love for this book hasn't changed over the years. If you have been hanging out with me for a while, you may know that I am in the middle of a reread that I am enjoying so much. I already have reviews for the first 3 books, and I have a playlist of Harry Potter content that I'm gonna put in the corner and in the description down below if you want to check that one out. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire has always been my favorite book in the series, and for now, it keeps its spot. I mean, I still have to read the last 3 books, but I just adored it. The plot is so exciting here. There's a lot of character growth that I didn't see before in the multiple times that I've read this book during my life. The Wizarding World has a way to stay whimsy and have so much absurdity and nonsense sometimes while adding some darker themes. I actually think this is the book where we switch from middle grade to YA, and that is so interesting. I will have a review coming up for this book really soon, but for now it stays my favorite. The next book that I'm gonna talk about is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This is a weird pick because I know that I loved this book, but I don't know why, because I don't think I can describe or review this book. I said in a video that I didn't know how to review this book, and I really stand by that because it's strange. I love Neil Gaiman. He has become one of my favorite authors. I love his writing style. I love his way of storytelling. I love his creativity. I love how I can get immersed in his world so hard. This book is about a man that goes back to his childhood town for a funeral, but he doesn't really want to interact with anyone. So he goes to this old house at the end of the lane, like where a girl used to live in, and he used to play with this girl when he was little. And he goes there and he starts remembering some events that happened when he was a child, some really supernatural, strange events. It has a lot of horrifying scenes that are so well done. It's disturbing in a lot of ways. It has a lot of dark themes, and at the same time it gives you a sort of nostalgia about how it felt being a child, and kind of wants you, like, kind of makes you want to go back to those times. I really recommend this book and the audiobook. Neil Gaiman narrates all his books and he's so good at it. I enjoyed the audiobook so much, and yeah, I recommend everyone to read Neil Gaiman's work because he's a genius. Next, we're gonna talk about a really strange and unknown pick, which is How the Steel Was Tempered by Nikolai Ostrovsky. This is a Russian, or rather Soviet, book. This is a fictionalized autobiography of this author, and I honestly don't know anyone that has read this book. I have a good story with this book because my dad recommended it to me when I was 15, and I went through so many bookstores looking for this book and I couldn't find it. They didn't sell it in my country. So what I did was to download it in PDF and print it. I printed 470 pages. There was a lot of ink and paper. Years later, I went to Argentina and I went into a bookstore and found it. So I immediately bought it. This book is about the life of Pavel Korchavin, or Korchavin. It's in Russian. I don't know how it's pronounced. We follow him through his life as a soldier of the Red Army, as a soldier of the Soviet Union. This takes place in 1932, I think. It starts there, and we follow him through the years. There's a lot to see about how socialism works from the inside. We can see the community of the working class, and it's so damn interesting. I always, since a little girl, been fascinated by history. I actually have a history degree, and this book is just so good. I mean, I don't think it's for everyone. There's a lot of like idealization of socialism and communism, so if you don't like to read about that stuff, I don't really recommend it. But the story is so compelling, it's so interesting. We see Pavel fighting for his life and fighting for his country, and how his convictions are so strong that that's at some point that's the only thing that drives him to keep fighting. I don't know if you have heard about this book. I really think you haven't, because I actually went on Goodreads to find it and it's just in Russian. The next one is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the book 2 in the Mistborn trilogy, and it's sort of an unpopular opinion to pick this one as the favorite book. People either pick The Final Empire, which is the first book, or the third one, which is The Hero of Ages. Mainly because this book is so much slower than the other two. It's so much more political. The first book is amazing, is action-packed. We have a really clear goal. We get to meet these characters that we come to love. We get to know the magic system. And book two is more like picking up the pieces left from the first book. And I think that's why book two is not as popular as book one. But what makes it my favorite out of the three is the amount of character work that we see in this book, in the Well of Ascension. I'm a character reader, so when we started diving deep into the characters, into like diving into their PTSD, diving into their anxiety problems, Brandon Sanderson does a really good job talking about mental illness and mental trauma, and I love that about this book. We also have a really interesting villain and a really interesting antagonist, so yeah, that's why I love this book so much. And second to last, we have Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 2 in the Stormlight Archive series. Yes, Sanderson writes really good sequels. He writes really good middle books. I have to say, I love all of the books. I love all 4 of the books. But what makes this one my favorite is the balance that we get here. First book, The Way of Kings, is a lot of world building. We get to know Roshar, and Brandon takes his time with his world building a lot, and I love him for that. But in book 2, we kind of we're already set into this world, so we kind of work more into the plot. And although the character study that he does in this book is not about my favorite character, I don't like this character so much, but he does a lot of character growth in a lot of other characters as well. There's a lot more action in this book. We see a lot of characters come together. The Way of Kings is a masterpiece of world building. Oathbringer is a masterpiece in character work, concentrating in one character. But Words of Radiance is kind of a balance between that, and it makes it so exciting. One of my favorite scenes in the entire series is in this book, and I just love it. And my absolute favorite book, surprising no one, is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I actually just made a dedicated review on this book because I reread it recently. So I will put the link in the corner and the description if you want to check that one out. This is a coming of age story narrated by Quoth himself. He is our main character, and we see this world through his eyes. It's a beautiful book. The writing style is just beyond beautiful, period. Rothfuss's prose is flawless. The world building is amazing. The set of magic systems are cool too. The characters are cool. The lore, the amount of lore this book has is crazy. I could gush about this book for hours, so if you want to see my more in-depth thoughts, I recommend you to watch my review. So those were my 10 favorite books of all time. I would love to keep chatting with you about it in the comments, what you think about the books that I mentioned. What are your favorite books of all time? I would love to know that. And if you want to stay tuned for more videos, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, ring the bell, and click on the subscribe button. I will be posting on Mondays and Thursdays. Thank you guys, and see you soon.